All right. Now, when it comes to the salivary glands, now up to this point in anatomy, we've only known the major salivary glands, right? The parotid, the submandibular, and the sublingual, which secrete not all saliva, 90% of saliva. The ones that we haven't taken much notice, they're not that important, is the minor salivary glands. I gave some examples like buccal, labial salivary glands, the one that we've seen before in the lamina propria of the lips, right? And the palatine, for example, they secrete the remaining 10% of saliva. So when we look at the histology, we're not going to focus on the minor. We're going to focus on the major parts, okay? But this is something to keep in mind that we don't just have major, all right? So if we want to look at the histology of the parotid and submandibular and sublingual gland, these exocrine glands, we have to first summarize it in a beautiful picture, all right? So something to keep in mind as a principle is that any exocrine gland, by principle, has to be covered by a capsule, all right? It has to be covered by a capsule. Let's imagine this is an exocrine gland, like a salivary gland. They have to be covered by this blackish color, a capsule, a dense, irregular connective tissue capsule, all right? So, and arising from this capsule is a part of its stroma. Any gland has a stroma and parenchyma. So, arising from the capsule are going to be these septa, which are walls, which is like this. They're extending from the capsule, all right? Extending from the capsule. So, again. The exocrine salivary glands, they're surrounded by a capsule, okay, made of dense, irregular connective tissue. And extending from the capsule are these walls. We call these septa, or in plural, septum. And basically, you see this empty space right here? This was the parenchyma. Parenchyma meaning the functioning part of the organ, while the capsule and the stroma, they were the supporting part of the organ, making up the stroma. So this empty space right here was basically your parenchyma, and the septa that was arising from the capsule, they were dividing the parenchyma into lobules, all right, into lobules. So they were dividing them into lobules, like here and here and here and here and here. And within these lobules contain two important things that make up your salivary glands, or your kidney, or not your kidney parenchyma, your salivary gland parenchyma, okay? Number one, and hold on, let me just, now let's draw it, let's put it right here on top of it so you can understand it, because we're going to need it later on. So the lobules that make up, or your parenchyma consisting of these lobules, they make up of two things, your secretory acini and your ducts. So let's divide them. So your lobules, right here, your lobules are going to be composed of, the one side is secretory part of the gland, and the other one is going to contain glandular ducts, okay? Glandular ducts. Now, one thing to keep in mind, we're talking about the main structure of all three main parts of the salivary gland, the parotid, and the submandibular, and all that. Now, I just wanted to keep you in mind that the difference in all of them is going to be in the secretory cells, the cells that make up them. But all the glands are going to have the same ducts, as we are going to see shortly, okay? So again, back in topic, the lobules are consisting of a secretory part and a glandular duct system, okay? Now the secretory part is divided into four types of cells, basically. What are these four types of cells? You got the first one, serous cells. All right, serous cells. From their name, they secrete saliva, watery saliva rich in proteins and enzymes, which is what the parotid gland is made of exclusively. The second one from the secretory part is your mucus cell. From their name, they secrete sticky, a very thick saliva, right? Rich in mucin, a glycoprotein that is found not in parotid but in the other sub, okay? The third type, and we took it in repro for the breast, is called Myo Epithelial Glands. Myo Epithelial cells, my bad. Myo Epithelial cells. Myo معناها muscle. Epithelial معناها epithelial. So these are specialized epithelial cells that surround your mucus cell and your serous cell, and from their function is that they contract. When they contract, their function is to push the contents of the saliva, the serous and the mucus saliva, into the duct. All right? That's their basic function, essentially. We're looking into it in another drawing. But we got myoepithelial cells. And the last one is a mixture, it's a combination of the mucus and the serous cell called the serous dimulans. Dimulans معناها concentric in shape. يعني إيش؟ يعني معك كده mucus cell, معك كده mucus cell, and you got these mucus cell joined together to form tubules, tubules. And then you've got the serous cell. You've got the serous cell right here. just attaching it or covering it, capping it, and they form the serous dimulans, which is like a concentric shape, a half moon. All right, and these are only found in the submandibular and sublingual, like we'll see later on. But the main point is the secretory parts of your glands are going to consist of serous cell, mucous cell, myo epithelial cell, or a combination of mucus and serous called serous dimulans. All right, that's going to be the difference in all three glands. Now let's look at the glandular duct system, shall we? Now the glands, the ducts that make up your salivary gland are going to be the same. So you've got, oh my bad, you've got number one, your intercalated cell, your intercalated duct. Your intercalated duct, that's the first duct that all the serous and the mucous cell, they're going to secrete their contents into, these intercalated ducts, all right, which are lined by simple cuboidal epithelium. Then after the intercalated ducts, these intercalated ducts are going to go to another duct. They're going to drain saliva into another duct. Basically, intercalated ducts are going to join with other intercalated ducts into another duct that's striated. It is called striated duct. Okay? Striated duct. From their names, they're lined by cells that are striated. What is the meaning of striated? They have streaks. They have streaks like these. And that's as a result of their mitochondria, parallel to each other, vertically oriented. And these striated ducts are lined by basically striated columnar epithelium, okay? So your intercalated ducts, they're lined by which type of epithelial cells? Simple cuboidal epithelium. Then the striated duct, we come to the striated duct, they're lined by what? Striated, and was that striated even? Simple columnar epithelium that are striated in appearance, okay? Now these two ducts together, if we were to draw it for you, all right, if we were to draw it, these two ducts, like let's say we have the intercalated ducts right here, and they drain into the striated duct, okay, and this striated duct will then move on, all right, in the black color. These two ducts, the striated duct and the intercalated duct, they make up the intralobular duct. What is it called? What is it called again? Your intralobular duct. What is the meaning of intralobular duct? Meaning these ducts, like imagine these are your lobules, all right? These are lobules, meaning these ducts are present within the lobule. They come directly from the serous and mucous cells, but they're present within the lobules. Now these intralobular ducts, these intralobular ducts are going to be draining into the next duct, okay? Which is called interlobular duct. Interlobular ducts. And from their names, these interlobular ducts, they're the ones that are going to be found in between the lobules. So if we're going to draw it in a blue color, it means the striated duct is going to join with the other striated duct to drain into the main, not the main duct, but the duct that is found in between each lobule, اللي هم interlobular duct, okay, found in between each lobules, all right? That's the meaning of interlobular, the duct found in between each lobules. Now the interlobular duct is quite complicated, the epithelium. I'm not gonna write it down because it's long, but basically know it that the interlobular ducts, they consist of many types of cells. As a result, their epithelium is going to be different, and their epithelium that lines them is like this: pseudostratified or stratified, columnar or cuboidal epithelium. You get that point? I hope so. They're lined by pseudostratified or stratified, columnar or cuboidal epithelium. Many of these different types of epithelial cells lining your interlobular duct, okay? Now your interlobular duct is not your main duct. It's not the final duct. If you notice, like let's imagine right here, let's put it in the blue color again. Your interlobular ducts, yeah, they were the ducts found between each lobules, but they're not going to be the main duct that's going to be coming out of the salivary gland. These interlobular ducts are going to drain into the final duct, the main duct, and it is called your main duct, coming out of the salivary gland, all right? Salivary gland. In other words, the main duct could also be called, for the parotid gland, parotid duct. Your main duct in submandibular duct. So submandibular duct, sublingual duct, parotid ducts, the one that come out of their glands respectively, those are your main ducts that they're talking about, okay? So this is your main duct, the final duct that consists of the glandular duct system. Which epithelium is your main duct lined by? It's very easy. It's lined by non-keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. That's the final duct coming out of the salivary gland. Okay, your main duct to terminate whatever, right? The oral vestibule for the parotid gland and so on. So this is your glandular duct system. And the glandular duct system, again, is the same for all three glands, major glands, parotid, submandibular, sublingual. The difference is going to be in the secretory part. Your parotid gland is going to be consisting exclusively of serous cells, okay, and myo epithelial cells. Your submandibular and your sublingual, they're going to contain the serous dimulans, which is the mixture of both mucus and serous, okay? So they're a mixed gland while the other is exclusively serous. So we're going to look into them later on. But this is, in summary, the histological arrangement of your salivary glands. Okay? And that's the entire point of this entire slide. Okay? And the slide over here as well. Of course, we didn't go much into detail. Of course, like the mucus cell, they all join together to form tubules. All right, and the serous cell, they join together by tight junctions to form acinus. Acinus minus spherical structures, okay? So you got mucus tubules resembling tubules, serous resembling acinar structures. They're pyramidal in shape, the typical stuff. And we can see, like we said before, the serous acinar structures and the mucus tubules. They all drain to the intercalated ducts, and then the intercalated ducts to the striated duct, then the striated duct to the interlobular ducts, and the interlobular ducts to the main duct. And you know the epithelium that they're lined by. Tamam? And we can see also, let's not forget, the serous dimulans, other structures as well, mixed acinas, and the myo epithelial cells, which are lined, like we said, they're surrounding the serous and the mucus cells, specifically in their basement membrane, as you can see. They're basically flat, all right? They're basically flattened cells, all right? Or squamous-like cells, all right? So that's basically it for the epithelial components of the salivary glands, like in general, taban. Okay? In general, we've seen these as we said before. And of course, here's the glandular duct system. I want you just to look with that we've said before what they are. And of course, here's the epithelium of your interlobular duct. Again, just memorize it like it is. Pseudostratified or stratified cuboidal or columnar epithelium. Tamam? Epithelium. So that's basically it for the main parts of the salivary glands. Now we want to go into specifics for each gland now, all right? For each gland. The parotid, the submandibular, with sublingual gland. Now, let's start with the parotid gland. Now, your parotid gland, they secrete saliva, right? But is it of serous or the mucus? Only serous acini. So if I were to describe you the parotid gland, it's an exocrine gland. It's a branched acinar gland that is made of exclusively serous cells. Thus, they secrete only what? Serous saliva. So if you look at this histological picture, what do you see? You see these darkened cells right here? These are your serous cells, which appear darker in stain. Why do they appear darker in stain? Because they contain many granules, rich in enzymes and proteins. That's why. So your darker stained cells right here, just darker stained cells in your gland, this is parotid gland. And now before you ask, this is not mucus cell, okay? This is most likely striated duct, okay? So we can see the presence of serous cell right here and some striated duct as well. And of course, before we go, if you don't remember the foundation histology regarding the structures of exocrine glands, simple, branched, tubuloacinar, and acinar, this is a picture that illustrates. Branched acinar, branched manaha, the duct is going to be branching out, the branching of duct. So when you say branched, that means the duct are branching out. Branching out into what? Acinar structures. Hence the name as branched acinar or alveolar, the same thing, okay? And of course, when we say acinar, meaning these are containing serous cells, serous acini, okay? That's the meaning of it. So they're only branched acinar only, not tubuloacinar, okay? And they contain the same ducts as we said, okay? Easy. So that's the parotid salivary glands. Go to the submandibular gland. Now the submandibular gland, it is not made of exclusively serous cell. Okay, just like the sublingual. So they're not made of serous cell. They're made of both serous and mucus cell. And if we look at this picture, we can see the presence of the darkest stained cells that we mentioned before for serous cell, right? Many granules. But we can also see the presence of mucus cell, which appear pale because mucin stains pale in their H&E stain, okay? So you see the presence of these mucus cells and the presence of these serous cells. So in that case, this is either submandibular or sublingual. Why do I say either? That's because the only difference between submandibular and sublingual histologically is the population between serous and mucus. What do I mean? I mean, for example, your submandibular gland, let's say they contain 60%, let's give an imaginary number, 60% serous and 40% mucus, okay? They're a mixture of both. They're a mixed gland. They contain both serous and mucus. However, the majority of cells that make them up is serous, since they predominate. That's why in this picture, if you see both serous and mucus, but the majority of these cells predominate are serous acini, this is submandibular and not sublingual, because sublingual is the opposite. Okay, it's the opposite. That's why in some books they say sublingual secrete only mucus. It's not true, but they mean the majority of them secrete mucus. Okay, that's the meaning of serous acini predominate. And again, if you don't remember foundation histology, according to exocrine gland structures, we said they were what? Branched, They were branched tubulo-alveolar for the submandibular and the sublingual. Branched, we meant the ducts. They branch into what? They branch into tubules, and SNR. So you got a SNR right here, and you got tubules. So branched tubule, SNR. And we said tubules, they represent your mucus tubules, and your SNR represents serous SNI. So it's a mixture of both, like we said. So it's a branched tubulo-alveolar or tubulo-SNR glands that consist of both serous and mucus. But which one is more serous SNI? They predominate. And we could say, in that case, instead of saying serous and mucus, we're going to say serous dimulans. Okay? What's the same ducts as we mentioned? Here, the serous dimulans, like we said. Here's the serous SNI covering the mucus. Here's another picture. Here's your serous SNI, and this is your mucus, pale stained under electron microscope. Okay? So that's pretty much it for the submandibular, and that's pretty much it for the sublingual as well. Because the sublingual is the same thing. The only difference is that let's give it an example. Let's say right here, for example, 90% of it contain mucus, SNI or tubules, and 10% serous. Okay? So as a result, when you look at histologically, you'll see many serous dimulans, but the majority of them are what? Mucus tubules in the sublingual gland. Mucus tubules, with some serous SNI capping them, forming the serous dimulans. All right? That's the only difference. Mucus SNI predominate in the sublingual gland. And again, it's a branched, meaning ducts branching into tubules and SNR. Hence the name branched tubulu for mucus, alveolar for serous. Branched tubulo-alveolar glands. Okay? And they consist both sublingual, submandibular, serous dimulans. Tamam? That's it for the salivary gland. Just as easy as I've predicted. All right? Now we finished the sublingual, and the submandibular, and the parotid gland. Now let's look at the GIT tract, the ileal esophagus.